I was just going to a party, but those musicians unlocked a world I never dared to touch. I didn't even want to go. But somewhere between the saxophone solo and that drummer's wink, my whole life exploded into color. It was supposed to be just another night. Brooklyn, Saturday, one of those artsy warehouse parties my roommate, Kayla, always dragged me to. I told her I was tired. I told her I had a headache. I told her I had reading to do for gender studies. She said, "Exactly. That's why you need to live a little." And maybe she was right. I stood outside the loft building, already regretting the sneakers I wore. Everyone going in looked like walking artwork, lace gloves, glitter beards, skirts over suits, suits over lingerie. A guy passed me wearing wings made from old vinyl records. I was just a blurry face in a hoodie, wondering why the hell I agreed to this. I wasn't even out. Not fully. Not even to myself. The bass was already thumping through the concrete by the time I climbed the stairs. Lights pulsed under the cracks of the door. Inside, the party looked like the set of a queer sci-fi musical. Suspended disco balls reflected laser beams, shadows kissed on walls, and everyone moved like they belonged in a movie I never got invited to. That's when I saw them. A jazz band. In the middle of all this electro-queer chaos, a 5-person jazz band in shimmering suits and soft defiance. The singer wore lipstick and a tux. The pianist had electric blue hair and heels sharp enough to murder. The drummer played shirtless, silver suspenders hanging off chiseled shoulders, eyes like he'd already read my diary and wasn't judging. They were called Lucid Velvet. And they were unlike anything I had ever seen. I froze. Not just because of the music, which was this electric blend of old-school croon and experimental funk, but because something about them tore at something inside me I'd kept duct-taped shut. Kayla elbowed me. "Told you. Magic." "Who are they?" I asked, voice low, almost embarrassed. "Local legends," she grinned. "Half jazz, half gender euphoria." I couldn't take my eyes off the drummer. Every beat he hit seemed to thump right in my chest. And every time he looked up, it felt like he was looking at me. I tried not to blush. I failed. I ended up near the makeshift bar, sipping cheap wine out of a plastic cup, still watching the stage. The band slid into a sultry cover of Nature Boy. The singer crooned, "The greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love and be loved in return." Was it corny? Yeah. Did I feel like crying anyway? Absolutely. I didn't know what it was, maybe the music, maybe the wine, but something in me cracked. And when the set ended and the drummer stepped off stage, towel slung over his shoulder, sweat glistening on his chest, walking toward me, I almost ran. But I didn't. "Hey," he said, voice low and warm. "You've got the kind of look someone gets when they're trying to figure out if they're dreaming." "Maybe I am," I replied before I could stop myself. He chuckled. "I'm Ari." I told him my name. He repeated it like it was a secret. Then he leaned in and said, "You've never been to something like this before, have you?" I shook my head. "Scary?" I nodded. "Good." He smiled. "Means you're exactly where you're supposed to be." We talked for hours, or maybe minutes, I don't know anymore. He told me about the band, how they all met at a queer youth center in Harlem, how music saved them, and how now they tried to return the favor for anyone listening. I told him less about school, about my major. I didn't mention that I still told people I was just an ally. I didn't say how I'd spend nights reading coming out stories and crying because none of them sounded like mine. But I think he knew anyway. "Want to feel something wild?" he asked, and I nodded before I even knew what he meant. He led me to the rooftop. The city stretched out in lights and sirens. It was cold. He gave me his jacket. And then, right there, under the Brooklyn stars, he kissed me. It was soft. And terrifying. And electric. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was playing a part. I didn't feel like I was disappointing anyone. I didn't feel broken. I felt alive. I didn't sleep that night. Not with him, not at all. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, jacket still smelling like Ari's sweat and cologne. Kayla peeked into my room once and smirked. So. Are you going to tell me who that was? I don't even know, I whispered. But I think he changed my life. She just smiled and closed the door. That party wasn't the end of it. It was the beginning. Ari texted me the next morning, survived the hangover? I replied, barely. Survived the awakening? Jury's still out. We started hanging out. Coffee turned into jazz nights. Jazz nights turned into sleepovers. Sleepovers turned into. Well, let's just say I stopped pretending I didn't know who I was. But coming out wasn't magic. It wasn't a song and rooftop kisses forever. My parents cried. My sister didn't speak to me for 2 weeks. Some friends ghosted. I lost a scholarship. But I gained me. And I gained Ari. The band took me in like family. They'd let me sit backstage, teach me chords, laugh with me, cry with me. They became something I never had, a chosen family who didn't just accept Methy saw me. And I started to see myself. Not as broken. Not as confused. But as becoming. The real turning point came at their next show. They asked me to perform. Me? I laughed. I can't sing. I can't dance. I barely exist. Ari smiled. Exactly why you need to do it. I stood on stage that night, heart in my throat. I read a piece I wrote about fear, about closets, about how love doesn't have to look like a wedding catalog. About how I never thought I was allowed to be whole. When I finished, the room was silent. Then, someone clapped. Then more. And then everyone stood. And I cried. Because maybe I was just going to a party. But those musicians unlocked a world I never dared to touch. A world where I could finally be me. You think once you come out, once you find love, the storm calms. But what no one tells you is, sometimes the storm starts there. After that first performance, things moved fast. I became visible. Not famous, not viral. But seen. At campus open mics, people would come up to me with teary eyes and say that felt like my story. Professors invited me to speak in their classes. I got asked to help organize Queer Fest. I even did a photo shoot for a student zine called Unboxed. It was exhilarating. It was exhausting. And the more I was seen, the more I realized how many versions of myself were still hidden. Somewhere inside me, a younger self still clung to fear like a security blanket. The kid who flinched when someone used the word faggot. The teenager who Googled, "Am I gay if I like a guy once," and cleared the search history. The college sophomore who nodded along when friends joked, "By people are just confused." Ari saw it. He always did. "Where do you go when you disappear?" he asked one night, when we lay tangled in my bed, moonlight spilling across our bodies. "I don't disappear." "You do," he said gently. "You shut down. Like you're scared you'll break the spell." I didn't answer. I didn't know how to. It got worse when my parents visited. They came up from Maryland for the weekend, dad in his golf polo, mom with her Tupperware of homemade samosas and carefully folded judgment. I hadn't told them about Ari. I hadn't told them about anything. "So how's school?" Dad asked over brunch, his fork dissecting a sad vegan pancake. "It's good," I said. "Busy. I'm doing some writing now." "About what?" Mom asked. I paused. About identity. Queerness. Finding voice. Dad blinked. Mom pressed her lips. "Oh," she said. That "oh" landed like a slap. "You're not doing one of those protests, are you?" Dad added, forcing a chuckle. "Saw a bunch of those rainbow flags last night. Whole street looked like a circus." My hand tightened around my coffee cup. "I think it's beautiful," I said. Mom sighed. "You know we love you, Beta. But all this talk, this phasey is dangerous. People don't like it. You'll get hurt." And there it was. Not hatred. Not cruelty. Just fear, dipped in love, wrapped in silence. I told Ari everything that night. I cried until I hiccuped. He held me like he was grounding me to the earth. "I'm so tired," I whispered. He kissed my forehead. "Then rest. Let me hold some of it. But I want them to see me. They might. One day. Or they won't. But you still exist. You're still real." I closed my eyes. And I tried to believe him. Lucid Velvet started rehearsing for their biggest show yet, a spot at Queer Bloom, a massive LGBTQ+ music festival in Manhattan. It was a chance to go from local legends to rising stars. And they wanted me to perform again, this time, on the main stage. I was terrified. "Why me?" I asked. "Because your story is ours," said Rosa, the pianist, lipstick bold as her chord progressions. "You're not just one of us. You're part of the music now." So I wrote. I poured every ounce of confusion, love, betrayal, hope into a spoken-word piece called Inheritance. It was about the pieces we carry from our families, the ones we keep and the ones we learn to set down. It ended with, "I am my mother's courage, my father's hands, and a name I gave myself. I am not their shame. I am not their silence. I am not broken. I am Bloom." I rehearsed it in the mirror. In stairwells. On subway platforms. Ari listened every time. "You're ready," he said. I didn't feel ready. But maybe no one ever does. The night of the festival, the crowd stretched beyond the stage into a sea of color, flags, signs, so many faces. I stood backstage, heart pounding in my ears, palms slick with sweat. "You okay?" Ari asked. "I think I might throw up." He handed me a water bottle. "If you do, just aim off the stage." I laughed. "Barely." Then the host called my name. I stepped into the light. And forgot to breathe. But then I looked into the crowd. And I saw a boy who looked like me, 10 years ago. Hiding behind a flag. Clutching someone's hand. Eyes wide with something between fear and hope. I spoke to him. And to everyone like him. I gave them every truth I'd buried. And when I said that final line, "I am Bloom," a cheer went up like thunder. I stepped off stage shaking. Ari kissed me in front of everyone. And the world didn't end. It expanded. But every high casts a shadow. The next morning, I woke up to a message request on Instagram. From someone I didn't know. "You're a fing disgrace. Your parents must be so proud. Hope you enjoy hell, homo." Then another. "Stay away from kids, freak." Then more. Dozens. Some were death threats. Some were slurs. One was a photo of my parents' front yard. My hands shook. I showed Ari. His face went cold. "We need to report this." "I don't want more attention," I said. "I just want it to stop." But it didn't. The university got involved. I was offered counseling, extensions, safety accommodations. Campus police did. Very little. Someone spray-painted "fake boy" on my dorm door. The school painted over it within hours. But I still saw it. Every time I closed my eyes. I stopped performing. Stopped posting. Stopped leaving my room. Ari tried everything: dinners, poems, even a kitten named Billy. But I pulled away. I can't breathe, I told him. It's like every time I exhale, someone's waiting to shove the air back down my throat. I know, he said, tears in his voice. But don't do this alone. Please. And I wanted to let him in. But when you're drowning, even the people who love you can start to feel like weights. I skipped the next few Lucid Velvet shows. I told them I was sick. That I needed space. What I didn't say was that I wasn't sure if I could do it anymore, this whole being seen thing. The price felt too high. Then one day, Kayla stormed into my room. "You're going," she said. "To what?" "Their gig. Tonight." "You're going." "I can't." "No, you won't. But guess what? Ari's been reading your poetry every night on stage in your place. Not asking, just doing it. Because he loves you. And because he refuses to let your voice disappear just because some coward screamed louder." I stared at her. "And if you don't show up, that's fine. But don't pretend like silence makes you safer. It doesn't. It just makes you smaller." Then she left. And I sat there, trembling. And I got up. The venue was packed. When I slipped in through the back, the band was mid-song. The air buzzed. I saw Ari at the mic, holding one of my poems. My heart twisted. And then he stopped. He looked into the crowd. Then toward the back. Right at me. And smiled. He put down the paper. And said, "He's here. He's safe. He's ready." Then he stepped back. And motioned for me to come forward. My legs moved before my brain caught up. The crowd parted. And I climbed the steps. The mic was warm. I closed my eyes. And I spoke. This world doesn't make space for softness. For difference. For truth that doesn't fit a checkbox. But I am still here. And if I must bleed to prove I exist, then so be it, because I will not go quietly. I will love loudly. I will live loudly. I will sing until the noise of hate drowns in my music. When I finished, silence hung like breath before a kiss. Then the room erupted. And for the first time in weeks, I felt the ground beneath me again. Ari hugged me on stage. He whispered, "I missed you." I whispered back, "I'm not hiding anymore." It's strange, the way healing doesn't come in one big moment, but in fragments. Ari and I sat on the fire escape of my building a few nights after the show. We passed a paper bag of fries between us and watched as the city glowed like a breathing thing. "I thought I lost you," he said quietly. "I thought I lost me too." The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was honest. "I'm scared it'll happen again," I said. "That I'll put myself out there, and the hate will come roaring back." "It might," Ari admitted. "But we'll meet it with more love. More truth. You don't owe the world perfection. Just your presence." I leaned my head on his shoulder. "Do you ever wish you could just disappear somewhere safe?" "All the time," he said. "But then I remember safe isn't the same as free." Those words hung in the air for a long time. And something inside me settled. That summer, Lucid Velvet went on a small Northeast tour: Boston, Philly, Providence, and D.C. They invited me to come as their spoken word opener. It terrified me. But I said yes. We traveled in a rented van that broke down twice. We slept on couches, in motels, once even in a drag queen's makeup room. Rosa taught me how to contour my cheekbones during a blackout. Ezra, the saxophonist, helped me pick stage outfits that weren't just safe neutral. And Ari was everything. We laughed. We fought over song orders. We cried when a trans teen in Providence said my poem made her come out to her mom. We stood on rooftops under pink-orange skies and made promises we had no idea how to keep. But we meant them. Especially the one where Ari and I whispered, "I love you," for the first time, in a diner bathroom with flickering lights and a lock that didn't work. "I love you too," I said. In all the versions of me. Even the scared ones. He smiled. Especially the scared ones. It was in D.C. that the next turning point happened. My parents showed up. I hadn't told them I'd be performing. I hadn't told them anything since the hate messages. I guess Kayla had sent them a video from the Queer Bloom Festival. Maybe she thought they deserved to see. They stood at the back of the room. I didn't know they were there until halfway through my piece. My voice cracked. I faltered. And then I saw Ari, just off stage, hand on his chest, nodding slowly. I breathed. And finished the poem. When I stepped off stage, I didn't look for them. But they came to find me. My mother's eyes were red. My father looked smaller than I remembered. "We're trying," she said softly. I didn't know what to say. "Are you happy?" Dad asked. I thought about the fire escapes. The late-night fries. The rooftop shows. The poems. The stage. The music. The love. "Yes," I said. "For the first time, I think I am." They didn't hug me. But they didn't walk away either. It was a beginning. Not an ending. Fall came fast. Classes resumed. The air turned crisp. And then, a letter arrived. An offer. A full scholarship to NYU's creative writing graduate program with a focus on queer storytelling. I cried when I read it. Ari spun me around in our tiny kitchen. Rosa cried. Ezra played a victory riff on his sax. It felt like a door opening. But there was a catch. It was in New York. Ari had just signed with a label in Boston. The band was planning their first album. We'd been in our own rhythm for so long, the idea of disrupting it felt like betrayal. "You have to go," Ari said when I told him. "But you're here." "I'm not your future," he said, eyes glassy. "I was your key. You're the one who unlocked the door." I shook my head. "Don't say that." He held my face in his hands. "I love you," he whispered. "And because I love you, I want your wings to stretch. Not shrink." And in that moment, I understood what love could be. Not just fire. Not just longing. But release. The night before I left, the band threw a goodbye party on the same rooftop where it all began. There were fairy lights. Cheap wine. Music. Laughter. Some of the same people from that first party were there, more confident now, more vibrant, like we'd all stepped into some brighter version of ourselves. Ari performed last. He didn't speak. He just played. Drums that pulsed like heartbeats. Cymbals like sighs. A rhythm that said, "I know you. I miss you. I love you still." I stood in the crowd, crying quietly. Because I knew. And he knew. This wasn't an ending. It was evolution. On the train to New York the next morning, I opened my notebook. The first page was blank. I wrote. I thought I was just going to a party. But I found music. I found fire. I found love. And I found myself. New York was louder than I remembered. Even after a few months, it still felt like a city made of electricity and ghosts buzzing with ambition, haunted by the past. I rented a studio in Bushwick that smelled like paint thinner and hope. The floor creaked. The radiator hissed. But it was mine. NYU's writing program was everything I hoped for and everything I feared. Everyone seemed so sure of themselves, like their ideas came with designer labels and literary agents. My first week, I barely spoke in class. I spent more time in the library bathroom than at my desk. But then I met Jazz. They were non-binary, Puerto Rican, with a buzz cut and eyeliner sharp enough to cut glass. They read my first short story in workshop one about a queer Indian kid stuck between timelines and traditions and looked me straight in the eye. "This isn't just good," they said. "This is truth with teeth." That was the first time I believed I might belong. I started performing again. Little cafes. Pop-up poetry nights. Park festivals where I had to yell over skateboards and sirens. Each time, it got easier to be loud. To say I'm here with my full chest. People began recognizing Menet just from lucid velvet clips or queer open mix but from my work. My voice. Once, after a reading, a middle-aged South Asian man approached me, tears brimming. "My son came out last year," he said. "I didn't know how to love him right. But your poem, your words gave me a language." I think about that man more often than I admit. Sometimes, it's not the crowd that changes you. It's the one person who sees you and says, yes. That. Ari and I kept in touch. Not constantly, but intentionally. Voice notes. Little photos. One-liners like, "Heard a song that sounds like your heartbeat." He came to visit once in winter. We didn't sleep together. We didn't need to. We walked through Central Park with fingers brushing like old songs. "Do you ever wish we had a different timeline?" I asked, watching a child throw snow at their dad. "No," he said. "Because in this one, you became you." I smiled. "And you?" "I became brave enough to let you go." We kissed. And said goodbye again. Not with sadness. But with fullness. My thesis was called "Things I Was Afraid to Say." It was a hybrid collection: poetry, essays, short fiction, all orbiting around the intersections of queerness, diaspora, and becoming. I dedicated it to Ari. To Kayla. To Rosa. To the version of myself that once sat outside that loft party, too scared to knock. On the day of my final reading, the room was packed. Jazz sat front row. My parents came. They didn't bring Tupperware. They brought flowers. And when I finished my last piece, a poem about shedding shame, like an old coat, me mom stood and clapped first. Later, backstage, she hugged me. "I still don't understand everything," she whispered, voice trembling. "But I see you now. And I love the you I see." I broke. And rebuilt all at once. A few weeks after graduation, I got a call. A literary agent had read my thesis. She wanted to represent me. I said yes. Then I screamed. Jazz made me a cake that said, "From closet to bestseller, BH." It was terrible and perfect. The book came out the following spring. It was called, "I Was Just Going to a Party." Because of course it was. And suddenly, my words were everywhere, in TikTok clips, in queer bookstores, on nightstands in homes I'd never enter. Emails poured in. Messages. Letters from kids in small towns. Letters from elders who came out at 60. Letters from parents trying. Failing. Trying again. Somewhere along the way, my story stopped being just mine. It became a mirror. And a lighthouse. I was invited back to NYU as a guest speaker. I wore gold. My nails sparkled. I stood behind the podium and looked out at a sea of students, so many of them bright-eyed, hungry, scared. I want to tell you something, I said. I didn't grow up dreaming of being a queer writer. I didn't grow up dreaming of being anything, really. I just knew I wanted to survive. But then one night, I went to a party. And it changed everything. And then I smiled. And now, I write for every person still standing outside the door, wondering if they're allowed to knock. I still get scared. I still doubt. There are days I retreat, when dysphoria claws its way into my bones, when a headline reminds me how cruel this world can be. But then I go to a reading. I hear someone recite my poem in a new voice. I get a message that says, because of you, I came out. And I remember. It started with music. It grew into fire. And now, it's light. Last week, I went back to Brooklyn. Lucid Velvet was performing their 10-year anniversary show in the same loft where I first saw them. The space looked smaller now, but the magic hadn't shrunk. If anything, it had deepened. Ari was still drumming. Still radiant. When he saw me, he froze for half a second, then grinned like it was the first time all over again. "You came," he said. "I never really left," I replied. He pulled me on stage for their final song. I didn't recite. I didn't perform. I just stood there, eyes closed, arms open, heart full. And when the final beat dropped, the crowd roared. And I smiled. Because somewhere along the way, I stopped being afraid to dance. The end. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.